Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I do believe it's actually good evening from here in Denmark, and I have an extra surprise for you today. A quick 1 versus 1 on Angoville. Yes, indeed, it is Angoville, and of course I've gotten a bunch of games, plus I have some of my own. But most of those I've actually received are so far a bit of the long run, and I'd figure I'd do a quick one in a sort of celebratory mood, since we do have a new patch out, so I'll be trying to get some extra casts out during this week. Hopefully I'll succeed, and who knows, if we also reach 400 I'll of course be doing another cast for that as well. So, a bit of a happy week hopefully, with hopefully a lot of casts. So of course send in all of your replays, exciting, long, short, flooded plains, bow lowlands, all that stuff. Send it in as long as it's victory point or 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2. So then, let's have a look, and of course this is Angoville, and in the southern corner featuring the 91st Luftlande Division we have Walleye 34444. Apparently his keyboard got stuck by the 4, and he will be facing me indeed again. I did have this shortened match, ImperialDane of the 4th Infantry Division ready to take on the Krauts. So let's get to it, shall we? Usual dual engineer start. Nothing particularly unusual there. Well, one engineer start and then the barracks up. Pioneer setting up the ubiquitous Wehrmacht quarters, always there, and further pioneer teams. And what is this? The red light continues to blink, meaning we do have a third pioneer team out. This is certainly a bit interesting, rather focusing on getting that Wehrmacht quarters up as fast as possible and then using all those pioneers to seize territory. What could this mean, ladies and gentlemen? What sort of devious strategies are in mind? And the Wehrmacht quarters has finished. So that's alright, nice and dandy. Pioneers moving out to all sides. Engineers, of course, rushing out in whatever fan movements they have. And the 1st Rifleman team is going to hit the field very soon, almost through with their production queue, or I suppose training queue, or something. I'm not entirely sure how to focus on that. Pioneers going for the strategic point and heading straight on for this fuel point, while the others seem to be rushing straight for this victory point as well. Riflemen hitting the field, and we're not entirely sure what's going to come out of this Wehrmacht quarters. Perhaps an MG42, perhaps Volksgrenadiers, perhaps a bike, or perhaps, if he's really, really bold, a sniper, but that's only for the gods to know. Well, for me as well, in a few minutes or seconds. Spotting that something's going on here, riflemen are quick to engage, and we do have the first unit out here, an MG42 team. Certainly interesting. Of course, with all of those pioneers seizing territory, he could be feeling confident in setting up an MG42 to then cover what he's taken. Riflemen taking on these pioneers. The pioneers outgunned in a rather nasty situation, only having a bit of a hedge to actually take cover in. Riflemen ignoring them and possibly having spotted this MG42 setting up there, deciding they'd rather move on here and do a bit of harassment over here, since this fuel point is also in Wehrmacht hands. And in the meanwhile, pioneer team moving up for the strategic cutoff point, but a rifleman team is ready from the barracks at the same moment and will probably move in to stop this. And riflemen taking on this pioneer team. Pioneers taking quite a lot of fire, but no casualties as of yet. And looks like they might be getting away in relatively good health, considering none of them are dead and within the aegis of the MG42, whereas the other pioneer team is forced to get out of there, leaving behind one wounded comrade. MP40 discarded by his side, since he doesn't really have much use of it since he's terribly wounded. Engineers going for this high yield fuel point. This strategic cutoff point has been once more secured, and its opposite in the southern area is this point. And of course these points are the usual ones to be harassed. Some will try to wire them off here and here. Certainly not a bad tactic, but of course you should be careful not to spend too much time on that. MG42 setting up here, going to try and stop this attempt and seizing this fuel point, while engineers are seizing this high yield munitions point. Riflemen rendering this fuel point neutral and then barking out of there before the MG42 cuts them down. Sadly, one is cut down on the retreat, while engineers and riflemen are continuing right down here, harassing points and going for the nearby points through the Wehrmacht base. Pioneers taking up this point as well, but apparently stopping, and will probably going for this strategic point as well. MG42 moving forwards, riflemen setting up there, and I do believe we're seeing, in fact, 3 MG42 teams. This is certainly a heavy MG42 strategy, MG42 spam, and of course this is what some might be tempted to with the small buffs they have received. Decreased training time, decreased manpower cost, but only 10, and also decreased pack up times. So there's certainly some players who are feeling confident and bold enough to just spam them out, and of course I suspect some newer players might have a bit of a difficulty with it. So of course I'm going to show a game where I'm actually taking it on, and this is my friend asking for a game, but of course I can't reply to him since I'm watching a replay. Engineers trying to stop this, but coming under fire from the MG42 team. Riflemen moving in from the north, forcing the Pioneers away while these riflemen are continuing down there. Riflemen up here, firing away at Pioneers, and MG42 team, 1 gunner down. And retaking this point, while the engineers act as the target for the MG42. They are going to have to get away, though, those chaps. Pioneers taking some light casualties, and the riflemen not really in the ideal position since only 1 man can fire this building. So not too good, but still 1 down. A small victory nonetheless, and of course force back those Pioneers a bit, and riflemen will have to get out of there. Supply yard going up, as I'm most likely going to suspect he's going to possibly be trying to rushing for something like, say, Sturm Armory, but no, he's going for the Krieg barracks, so he's not going to be quite rushing forward. MG42 sitting back a bit, thus giving full arc from both sides, and these riflemen will quickly feel a bit unfortunate. Had they stayed a bit closer to the hedge, of course they wouldn't have suffered that fate, but there you go. Fresh assault from the north, while the supply yard is going up, and we'll probably be seeing a motor pool very soon as well. So, flamethrowers also being equipped for some of those engineers to set up for an assault. Once more going for the strategic cutoff point, but they at the same time do not actually have access to these points. Curious they're not, and we see a further Pioneers moving towards the west. The Krieg barracks is done. We'll have to see what he'll be going for. Possibly a pack, possibly Grenadiers. Pioneers slaughtered in a few accurate shots from these dashing riflemen, and we are seeing continued attempts at just being mobile, putting up pressure. Engineers moving in here through the blind angle and setting up shop here, forcing those MG42 gunners away. And of course that is rather the way you're going to deal with MG42 gunners, in particular if they have no infantry to actually support them, which is the sort of fatal error committed here. That is, you use their lack of mobility against them, hit them from every angle, and right now you see here they set up in a sort of strong point. MG42s covering most points, while this in the building will also cover any attempts through here. But at the same time that does also leave the rest of the map awfully vulnerable, and of course his Pioneers who are trying to actually seize points except for these 2 points. A bit curious. Pack 38 out and quickly cloaking, not sure why though. Not much of a reason to it, and generally unless you're actually close to the front there's no reason to actually cloak it, since it will move slowly because of that. Grenadier team also hitting the field, so actually getting some infantry now after this great a delay. MG42 trying to stop the harassment here, but forced back, and Pioneers continuing their job in the west. And the motor pool is finished. Huzzah! And all that. And we see the first Grenadiers getting close to the riflemen. Riflemen engaging, getting closer, probably trying to get into this building. We'll have to see how that will go. 1 rifleman down to the accurate shots of the Grenadier. The 91st Luftlande finally beginning to actually bite back a bit instead of just nestling a bit towards the back. Grenade going in, and oh dear, rifleman team is lost. Engineers moving in from the rear with a flamethrower, but getting suppressed, but they are determined. They shall scorch out these Germans no matter the cost. Riflemen moving in, taking cover behind the haystacks, and going to force these engineers, MG42 gunners back. Also these Pioneers will certainly not be looking in a happy position. Now they have opened up this area and will continue to deal with anything that might actually remain here. Looks like this Pioneer team with the flamethrower might go down. There we go, hitting the flamethrower tank, setting everything on fire. Not the happiest fate to endure. I don't see a flamethrower team holding back a bit there, and we see Grenadiers quick on their feet to move in. Second Grenadier team finally reinforcing, so certainly a bit greater infantry presence. Riflemen going to have to pull back to the other comrades who are going for this point, while engineers are still sneaking about with their flamethrowers. What not else? A bit of manpower and fuel floated. I'm probably a bit occupied now, but I will probably be going for an armored car. Of course, I don't know. There's a anti-tank gun out, and forced to stop taking back this point. Engineers moving in with flamethrower, trying to scorch these grenadiers, but they're taking a bit too much fire in a perilously bad state. So the riflemen will have to hold their position. A bit exposed, though I was a bit unfortunately not good enough at getting them into cover. Grenade going off, causing heavy casualties on the riflemen, forcing them into a full rout. Fresh rifleman team on the field, and we do finally see a T-17 armored car moving out, and another MG-42 moving in with pioneers to lead the way and spot, and another setting up there. He's awfully keen on those MG-42s, very slow, very static, and of course if outmaneuvered it will of course end very badly. And so far I've actually managed to do a pretty decent job, denied him most of his fuel for most of the time, so he hasn't really been able to use it to a greater advantage, which could have been the thing that forced him towards the Krieg barracks. And let's have a look. No doctrine as of yet, not a lot of fuel, certainly not enough to go for the assault phase, I do believe, and certainly not going to give him much either. Really heavy attrition, what with all those pioneers getting killed, MG-42s getting outflanked, and of course forced back into a retreat. T-17 taking fire from the pack, uncloaked of course on the first shot, plus with the T-17 have received a small health buff, it is of course more resilient. This MG-42 will have to get out of there since the 37mm gun is quite lethal. And riflemen moving in support, Panzerschreck being equipped on these grenadiers, so there will be a bit more mobile anti-tank assets, but large force of riflemen moving in with flamethrower support, and of course the T-17 continuing to fire away. And these grenadiers are awfully exposed and will be retreating quite swiftly alongside their comrades. Of course, when the